Welcome, everyone, to another powerful episode of the Powerhouse podcast. I have to tell you, I am over the moon with my guest who is joining me in the ring today. I absolutely adore this woman. We used to live near each other until she chose to vacate Austin, Texas, to move to Florida. But before I tell you about how fabulous and amazing and awesome she is, let me just once say hello to Maruxa. Welcome.
Hi, Candy. It's so nice to be here. I'm truly honored to be your guest today.
I'm oozing with so much happiness that you're here. And for all of you tuning in, you know that this is our space to really disrupt how we look at leadership and what it means to be a leader in today's environment. And as you know, leadership truly is a function of how you choose to show up, how you choose to serve others, and how you choose to take personal responsibility inside that space. And as always, our conversations get rich and juicy and meaty, and we never know where they're going to go, which is what makes this so fabulous and exciting. But before we jump in, because I know Maruxa and I can go all over the place when it comes to some rich and juicy discussions. Like I said, I know her and just absolutely adore her. She's just such a light. But let me tell you a little bit more about her background so you can get a sense of why I wanted this powerhouse to join us today. Maruxa Murphy is the founder of Perky Perky, an award-winning women's empowerment brand that is revolutionizing the conversations around the coffee cup. I love that. I literally just got chills reading it. Over the last 10 years, Maruxa has been featured in Forbes, Huffington Post, Reader's Digest, CNN, NBC, Fox News, and the Austin American-Statesman, just to name a few. Maruxa has been known to be a master at creating tribes and consults with 6, 7, and 8-figure brands on how to scale their sales through small yet mighty communities. She's brought in over $24 million in sales within the nonprofit sector, personally built or consulted on dozens of transformative online and offline communities and tribes, and produced over 1,000 training programs and products for coaches, consultants, e-commerce brands, authors, and entrepreneurs in a variety of industries. In the discussion today, we're going to have all kinds of fun. And seriously, this woman is just a powerhouse. I just love her. So welcome again to the show, Maruxa. So thrilled to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here, Candy, truly. You know, when we first met, which was, I think it was like 5 years ago now, I just knew that I needed to stay in touch, right? And it was one of those, like when you get those instincts, you're just like, I just know intuitively, I know I'm supposed to know her. Yeah. And then last year, we had the privilege of being able to work together kind of on happenstance with our dear friend Sherry English, and to put a presentation together on collaboration and strategic collaborations. Like, it was fun and powerful, and what a blessing for me to have gotten to know you better over this last year.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, right? I mean, and I think that's a really great place to start, because I know for you, this path has been all paved with a lot of intuitive leaning into, I guess, if you want to call it that. So let's talk a little bit about, because we met at a networking event, years ago. And it was one of those that we knew at some point there was something. And literally didn't speak to each other for a while. We watched each other, followed each other. I mean, literally lived in the same city, but doesn't mean anything. When you're an entrepreneur, you know that I see more Austin people in the airport than I actually see in Austin.
So true.
Or in different cities. But it was one of those that you just intuitively knew, right? And so yes, last year we had the opportunity to play together and to create something from nothing that really allowed us to kind of showcase our gifts and play together and talk about strategic collaborators. But what I'm curious about is, that's such a good example of kind of leaning into that intuition. Talk about how your intuition has kind of carved this path, because you have a very unique path and story that I just kind of highlighted really briefly. But talk about how that intuitive kind of sense of knowing who you are and listening, how that's played into how you've gotten where you're at now.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because quite honestly, I didn't even know, I never gave any thought to the term intuition or being intuitive until about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And it wasn't until I met someone who's now a dear friend, this woman named Emily Rose in Austin as well, who started helping me realize, Maruxa, you are such an intuitive being. Do you realize? So it's funny that you asked that, because I just honestly, it's kind of a new word in my vocabulary, and it is definitely something that I've leaned into more and more over the last 13 years that I've been in this world of entrepreneurship. at first it was very much like, I always use this term, stop shoulding all over yourself. SHOULD.
Oh yes, that's one of my phrases for
Oh,
sure.
is it really? Oh, that's
Okay.
funny.
It's the S in the noise. We talk about stop shitting all over yourself.
Yes. And definitely when I started back, whenever it was 2016, 2017 timeframe, when I started really moving into entrepreneurship, 2006, 2007 timeframe, when I started moving into entrepreneurship, I definitely was trying to follow follow the rules and check off all the boxes. And they told me I'm supposed to do it this way, so I'm going to do it that way. And then quite honestly, I was doing it while I was working full time. So I was director of multicultural affairs back in 2006, 2007, and for a college in Florida. And I wanted to find some freedom for myself. I was working 100 hours a week. I loved what I did, but I couldn't imagine keep this pace of life. So I decided, how do I change that? And we had the great fortune, I don't know if you call it that, but we had the fortune, in essence, I see it now as a fortune actually, of going through the mortgage and the real estate crisis of 2008, 2009. My husband was in the mortgage industry. And it just so happened that we also got pregnant in 2008 at the same time. And I'm graduating with my master's in counseling, and just life is just bigger than, all the demands were just way bigger than I've ever had at any other point in my life. So husband's out of work because of the mortgage crisis. I'm super pregnant, finished up my master's, and I'm the director of multicultural affairs, running 70 different student organizations and a team of 5, and it was just big stuff. And then I was, of course, trying to build an entrepreneurship in there somewhere. And I was checking off all the boxes. And there was a point finally where I realized my body couldn't take the 100-hour work weeks. I needed to give that up. So I did. I quit my job, ended up becoming a stay-at-home mom for a little while, but needing to go back to work when she was 4 weeks old. Or thinking I was going to be a stay-at-home mom for longer than that, right? But 4 weeks old, I had to go back to work because we were almost out of all of our savings account by that time, and we were just praying and hoping that we'd get another sale in the door or a temp job for my husband while we were in this craziness. Well, then lo and behold, he reached out at one point to a dear friend of ours named David Fry of Marketing Best Practices. And David was a mentor to my husband from afar. And long story short, David offered my husband an opportunity in Houston, Texas. And I remember it was that moment, there was a moment he walked out of the bedroom to tell me, hey, David is wondering if we'd move to Houston. And I was like, well, what's in Houston? He goes, a job. And I'm like, I looked at my little girl who was 5 months old at the time. And I was like, well, what do we have to lose? We have nothing to lose. And it was in that moment that I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, we have the power to shift anything at any given point in our lives if we allow ourselves to intuitively lean into what's possible instead of leaning into the fear and all the shoulds. Because everything's in Florida, right? My whole family, I'm literally one of 36 first cousins, and almost all of us live in Orlando. My husband's family lives in Orlando. Here we are literally moving with the only grandbaby on my side of the family, all the way across the country in essence, right? To a place where we knew nobody except for David Fry, who would be my husband's boss. Right. But it just felt like the yes that we were supposed to lean into. And then the next yes came when I realized, oh my gosh, what would it look like if all this leadership training and this identity work that I did at the college level, working with faculty, staff, and students, what if I could figure out how to do that virtually? Because it was back in the day when people were like, work from home, create an ebook and make millions, And I'm not saying that, that's maybe it happens to some people, but that definitely didn't happen for me. But what did happen for me was, again, seeing something and being like, is that possible? Do I believe that's possible? Leaned in. I'm going to create the intention to figure out how to do that. I have this baby. We're moving to a place where we know nobody. I'm kind of quitting I was in direct sales at that time to create that extra revenue and income. I'm quitting that because I don't know anybody in this new town. It's time to start from scratch again. But let's lean in and figure out, how do I intentionally do this? And quite honestly, that putting that intention and leaning into my intuition that I think this is the right next step, allowed me to, you know, though I was trembling, take that step into this a whole new world that I had no idea I was about to jump into. And in fact, actually yesterday, Candy, it was 10 years ago from the day we moved.
That's crazy. And I mean, there's so much I want to kind of unravel in that or dig into a little bit more. And one of it is the fact that, and it was interesting because I just did a video earlier this morning, actually, on the same kind of thing, that there's moments where life throws you sucker punches. And I think sometimes people think it's so easier, you know, once you got it figured out and you put yourself in a space that you're like, okay, I've got a good thing going, that you just keep humming along and you don't ever have those moments where you hit the tracks and you kind of come like off the tracks and get a little derailed. And you talk about, you know, your husband lost his job, you just had a baby, all these things were going on, your body told you you couldn't work 100 hours a week. And I feel like sometimes we get these signals, these signs, or like I like to say the 2x4, the fact that life throws me some sucker punches. And it's the choices we make inside of that, right? And so I think, you know, the fact that you talk about leaning into that intuition, you talk about that space of, I don't know why, but it was just a yes. What I'd like to kind of explore a little bit more is, what were some of the things you had to use as either, you know, the trust muscle or that confidence or courage or whatever those things are? Because when there's that unknown, that can also be scary. That space, you know, in your body where something that really is like, whoa, that's big. It can frighten you and excite you. It's the same way your body, but there's a choice you make in that, right? So talk a little bit about how you process or how you make those choices when maybe that intuitive sucker punch or that intuitive knowing or that something shows up, you have to step into for yourself in order to actually move forward. Because it's one thing to say you're going to do it, but you really stepped in a space to walk that talk and that journey and executed it like a massive level. And I would imagine that it wasn't always easy every day.
No. And honestly, you know, I'm at a point, you know, so now let's fast forward 10 years. It's, for me, the minute I get those same exact feelings of that, like, exhilaration that this is a yes, and then also that, crap, this is so scary. Right. I know now, I don't dwell so much on the fear because I know that that's the right move, right? But back then, you know, when I was kind of new to recognizing, you know, my intuition, it definitely was a lot more of like, okay, I go to God. I'm like, okay, God, show me that this is a sign. Like, okay, God, am I doing the right thing? And then I would try to logically plan it out. But oftentimes I found when I would go logical on these situations, it would get more freaked out because I don't know what, you know, and I've been so known to plan out my whole life. Like, that's just kind of the way I am. I'm very driven. I was always like pretty much typical A student who knew she was going to go to 4-year college and then graduate and then go on for her, you know, that's me. So I knew I had planned my whole life out up to this point. And then all of a sudden, life was just like, we're going to show you that there's something even more. And we're going to invite you into that journey. More recently, we shared this before we jumped on to the recording, but, you know, I really start to look at life now as if I'm Alice in Wonderland, right? And Wonderland is life. Yeah. And sometimes it's really weird. Like, sometimes it's freaky weird, you know? But then
water's showing up or something else, right?
Yeah, it just keeps showing up. Because what I found is when I come to life with this giddiness and this excitement for what's possible, not only do I enjoy the moments, I enjoy being present that much more, but I get to see things I actually wouldn't have seen otherwise. Mm-hmm. You know, I actually redid this again. I had to remind myself of doing this again in my life because, you know, as you mentioned, I used to live in Austin, which is like land of all of my dreams come true, right? Like, I loved living in Austin. Austin feels like home still to me when I think about it. We moved to Florida to be closer to our family and also for my husband's an opportunity that my husband wanted to take for his career. And it's been really hard. You know, it's been really hard. I mean, there's great moments with a good pool on a lake, sunshine all the time. Yay, that's good. But I don't have a community. I don't feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. I'm in the day-to-day and I'm just doing life with my 3 kiddos and trying to manage kiddos with a career and all the things. And so I went from like always being busy and doing and feeling like empowered because I love my community and my community likes me, and you know, it's like a good win, to just like literally feeling anonymous. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, Candy, this last, I don't know, we've been here 8 months. Up until basically October, I felt like I was in a big pity party for myself, and I hated it because it's not me, right? It's not the me that I'm feeling the most amazing in. Right. I felt like, and my husband and I've talked this through since then, but at one point I'm like, you did this to me. It was very much like centered around my feelings and all of the things that were going on for me.
And what's interesting about that is, honestly, this whole year, one of the things we've been talking about, or I've been talking about a lot, is because I've been feeling the same thing from several different people. And I think there's times we get to a certain level, especially when I sit here and I read all your accolades and I read the things you've done. And I mean, by anyone looking in from the outside, you are a freaking powerhouse, and there's no doubt about it, right? And yet, there's still this space where you're really real and vulnerable and just, a human being and a woman and has a life and doing life. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is there's this space that I like to call that we're just a duck, right? You're kind of like, we're above the water. People look and they're like, yeah, you got your stuff together, Maruxa. You're just like, man, girl, you never stop. Anything you touch turns to gold. You're just like amazing. And because I know people say that about you because it's true. And underneath there's a space where our legs are going sometimes a mile a minute, because we're like, I don't know where this turn is taking me. And right now I feel kind of upside down, or I feel isolated, or I feel like, if I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of freaking out at the fact that this doesn't feel like I've hit my groove. And I feel like I know it's probably a growth opportunity, and I don't know if I see it all right now. And so what I'd love, to kind of ask you about a little bit is, what do you do in those situations? Because I feel like even today I was really like, look, sometimes you got to just honor the suck and the ick, and today's one of those days for me. I just feel like, right? And I'm like, so I personally am like, I could crawl into a blanket and call it a day and whatever. And I also know that there's other choices inside of that. So when you find yourself in that space and you find yourself realizing, I've been kind of having a pity party for myself. Mm-hmm. How do you, one, acknowledge that? Because, there's this space that we could sit there and beat ourselves up and be all kinds of like shame of, I can't believe you're doing that, which is real. So how do you sort of come to that conclusion that, okay, I'm not being authentic for who I know I am?
Yeah.
And so once you have the awareness around it, or the reality of it, then what is it what you choose to do as a result of that? And I think there's so much inside of that when we have that conversation.
That's a great question. And I appreciate that. I appreciate it because I honestly, in reflecting back to that time, I think it was recognizing that I know what it feels like to feel good. And this is not it. So that was number one. Number two was to take ownership instead of playing victim for my life, right?
So how do you take ownership? Just to interject there. So when you say ownership, because I think that's, we do a lot of defining things on the show, because I think we say words, people are like, oh yeah, I get it. And I want to know for you, what does that mean for you to take ownership?
Yeah, great question. So for me to take ownership is reflecting on what it is that I actually want, and recognizing that the current reality of how I'm showing up is not going to lead me towards where I want to go. Right. So for me, owning that is to recognize my responsibility and how I can shift that. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I love that you use the word responsibility. We talk a lot about that. Yeah. As a leader needs to know that it's a personal responsibility in terms of how you're choosing to show up and how you're choosing to serve. And right there's an example of how you're choosing or not choosing to show up in that moment. That ownership is really a personal responsibility and reflection to say, that's not okay for me.
That's right. And, for me, it was little things, right? Like for a while, I was working from home only during the school day. So that meant I was getting into the groove of, and school day here in South Florida is 8 to 2. So I would only work during those hours, right? But I wouldn't dress up. right? So I would, and you know me, I love clothes.
I know.
I love looking cute. I like wearing a nice blazer. I like wearing nice earrings. And so for me, it was, I just stayed in my yoga pants all day, didn't do my hair, didn't put any makeup on. Yeah. Like full on, just like owned that mom life type of feel, right? Whatever the stereotypical mom life looks like that I was kind of falling into. I just wasn't happy. And so that's one example. I would do that. I would walk to the school, pick up the girls after school, and I would sit there hoping and waiting for someone to say hi to me, like the other moms or whatever. They all had their cliques. And what was happening was then I was like, I found myself at the beginning of the year, like being all like, well, you know, they all already have their groups. Who am I to like find my person? And just like doing the stupid self-talk stuff, right? Where I was like totally judgy McJudgerson to these mamas that literally were the kindest women, because I ended up challenging myself to go meet them, right? And when I did, oh my gosh, these women have the most beautiful hearts. They want to like hug everybody and invite you to all the things. They just didn't know that that's where I was. And I was sitting in my own little bubble of like, me, you know, within myself. And then coming home and being upset about it instead of just going out and being brave and just saying hi. You know?
Well, and those assumptions are so damning, right? Because I mean, we sit here, and what's so interesting, and I heard somebody put it in perspective. Actually, I heard two different people. First of all, we worry so much. One of our biggest fears is that we're going to be judged and criticized. And the thing is we're all judging. We are all judging McJudgerson, and we're all we're always judging. And the thing is everyone's judging you, and no one's giving you half the amount of time you think they are. Because as soon as they judge you, they made it about them, and they judge you, and then it's about them again. And I love that I heard someone else say once that we're sitting here going, oh my God, what do they think about me? And you know what they're thinking? It's, oh my God, what are you thinking about me? It's like we walk into these spaces and we put these walls up that are so like crazy, and we all do it, myself included, and a lot of times you spot it, you got it kind of thing, right? So you see it out there, and we sit there and we make up a story because we stepped into a place of, oh my gosh, and here's the reality of it. What if they don't like me? So therefore, rather than making myself vulnerable and getting rejected, I'm just going to make up a story that they're these little pretentious, cliquey women that are all together, that are doing whatever. We do this in the office. We do this in our communities. And then the reality is, holy cow, that judgment almost cost us. There was a great ad that was just done by, I don't know, it's a beer that's in an international beer. And they did it where they literally just put a picture of people up, and you got to put whatever labels. And like they'd have a white man that was very serious, and someone wrote racist, and they wrote different things on there, and then they had the opportunity to meet each other in person. And they all got to take down the different, this person's confused about their gender identity. This person, simply by a rash decision made on an appearance. And when they actually engaged and had conversation, they broke down stereotypes, because we have such because there's this dichotomy, right, that says our biggest desire in life is that somebody sees us for who we really are. And our biggest fear in this life is, oh my God, what if they see me for who I really am? Isn't that crazy? And it's like, that's exactly where the duck starts kicking the legs underwater, and it's like, oh my God, I want them to like me. And oh my God, what if they don't? And what if they see me? And what if they see me? And then the wheels come off, and we unravel, and we put ourselves in months of agony.
It's the truth.
Because we've made up a story that's not even true.
That's so true. I know. It's funny because, it was at that time that I started to recognize you, even just going back to the clothes that I was talking about, the mom clothes. I love mom clothes. I love.
So do I, and I'm not a mom. I'm actually in some yoga pants right now.
I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I have my blazer and my.
I am really put together up top, and I'm wearing really crazy socks. I have a blanket, and I'm wearing yoga pants.
Each other, because I'm wearing yoga pants underneath.
Of course, because it's comfortable.
So here's the thing, with that. I started also just showing up as I wanted to show up. My big, huge I love my sunglasses. My big sunglasses with my bright red shirt. Everyone always here wears kind of like the same colors, which is more gray and white and black. And so I was like bright red, big sunglasses, got my hair blown out, because I had a meeting I had to go to after that, and I was like, I'm just walking in. I'm like, I feel good. This is me. And as I started to show up as me, I was able to feel good in myself, you know, and then have the confidence to go out and say hi to these women, and then just, you know, just be me. And it's just shifted so much.
And attract the people that want to be part of that light, right? I mean, it's that space that we get so worried about. And to go back to your analogy before, we want to check the boxes. We want to make sure that we're playing in the right lane. We want to make sure that it's socially acceptable. Because I've got people that say, I can't believe you get on video or go out in town, and you know me, I love my baseball hats. And I'm like, and I can look really cute. I can put on a pair of earrings, or I can have no makeup whatsoever. Yeah. But I also don't mind. I love being able to show up that way. It's part of who I am. And I get enjoyment out of being able to just be a little rugged and be a little natural and just be the element. And you realize that when you have the confidence in that space, you attract exactly what you need, because the confidence is the thing I think we forget to put on sometimes.
Amen, sister. Yep. I actually had another experience, just even another recent experience as well. Here I've noticed in a lot of the circles of entrepreneurs, and nothing, I mean, again, it's just cultural some differences, cultural differences, right? But everyone's a lot more serious, and you don't make eye contact with people. And it's very much like you stay in your lane until I invite you in.
Right.
So, you know, this Maruxa gal comes in, moves in, and I'm just like, hey guys.
She's so Austin.
She's so Austin. I'm like, hi, how are you doing? And, you know, just smiling and, you know, friendly. And I just like, you know, I can't keep pretending I have to be serious, because if I keep playing that role, then that's when my inner critic comes in. Right. Because I start like, you know, I don't know what it is, but that's just for me, or maybe for everybody, but I don't want to be serious. Life is too short to be so serious all the time. So I choose not to be. So I've been giving myself the privilege of smiling and just complimenting people and inviting them to a random coffee, even if we just met, and without thinking that I'm hitting on them, you know, kind of thing. And what's happened is it's starting to create some ripple effects. I'm starting to see people start to smile back, or, you know, people inviting other people to coffee, as I have been doing. It's just kind of fun, you know? And I'm like, all right.
Well, and for you not to do those things, I mean, I can explain why. It's inauthentic to who you are. I know you. You have this very soft, open, approachable, just lightness about you. And you're always bubbly and effervescent and smiling. And it's one of the reasons people fall in love with you so much. And for you to not put that out there in the world, it blocks people from, one, feeling that and wanting to be attracted to that, and like, ooh, I need some more of that. I need some Maruxa in my life. And giving themselves permission to do the same, right? Because think about it. If you've gotten caught up or got caught up at one point in the, am I playing in my lane? Is this socially acceptable? Imagine how many other people are playing that same space that and for some of them, and you know this in the work that you do. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we even talked about it when we did our strategic collaborations piece. Yeah. You get in that space where there's so many people not connected to who they are. And a lot of people go out and want to create these partnerships and these collaborations and this tribe and this community, yet they haven't even taken the time. And we talked about that at length. They don't take the time to know who they are first. Yeah. They don't even know what lights them up. They don't know what their standards of integrity are. They don't know their core values. Mm-hmm. And when you do, you get into a space that says, look, this is what my camp looks like. And it's either for you or it's not. And either way, it's none of my business. Right. You know, channel my inner spirit animal, the great Betty White, who says, you know, someone's opinion of you is none of your damn business. Mm-hmm. And you just start to realize that the only way you're going to attract the people that need you the most is to really be a lighthouse. And to be a lighthouse, you've got to stand in that space of full authenticity, no matter how uncomfortable it makes other people around you, because their being uncomfortable has nothing to do with you.
Exactly. That's right. 100% that. Yeah. And I'm grateful for having to have relearn this lesson, right?
We have to relearn it. Oh my God, it never goes away.
It never does.
I'm in the throes of it right now. No.
Yeah. And when you think you do, that's oftentimes when you know that you've got to keep working on it. You know what I mean? Like something's
when you think you got it figured out, you probably need to go back to the drawing board, because it's the space of recognizing that we know nothing, right?
Yeah. And so, you know, honestly, as that, to bring that back into this conversation of being intuitive and leaning into that, like, I think it's all a part of it, right? Like, so for example, what I mean is, had I not given myself that permission to kind of reconnect back to self and really choose to show up in my bravery and my courage to say yes to Maruxa in a new town, in a new place where it feels very foreign, I wouldn't be able to see the goodness around me, right? Because there's so much good in my new little town. There's so much good. And that's now owning that. And I think that relates to in other areas of our careers and in areas of our, if you're business owners, you know, in areas of our business's growth. When I say, you know, give myself permission to be brave and be more present with the convictions that I have within me, then I get to fully show up as I am and be in my most powerful self to make the right decisions for the next, you know, for that thing to help grow our companies or our careers, right?
Yeah.
So
that's so powerful. And I think that's the beauty of all of it, right? Is there's always something good in any environment we're in, right? There's always something to seek. That's the blessing. That's the gift. That's the opportunity. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes when things get challenging or tough or they're uncomfortable. We forget to look for the silver lining or the nugget or the diamond in the rough kind of thing. And there's always, and I mean, not to sound like Pollyanna Sunshine, but I'm going to sound like Pollyanna Sunshine. There's always a silver lining. There's always something to have immense gratitude for, and that gratitude changes everything, right?
yes,
I mean, everything. And so, Maruxa, first of all, speaking of gratitude, just love that you're here. I love that we're playing together, and I love that we're just having a real conversation, right? And I know there's people that are just fascinated by who you are and love, you know, everything that they're hearing, and want to know how can they continue, you know, to connect with you and reach out. How can they find out more about what you've got going on, and continue the conversation if they want to?
Sure, absolutely. So I think the easiest way is to go to my website. It's my name, MaruxaMurphy.com, and I'll spell that for you because I know it's a hard one. It's MaruxA Murphy, MurPhy.com. And you'll be able to get a good glimpse of, you know, who I am through that, through my site. I do a lot of consulting for companies on really beginning to grow your community, grow your tribe, as you mentioned earlier in my bio. And I run Perky Perky Coffee. So you'll have, if you go to Maruxa Murphy, you get to know me more. And you also will get to know how to connect with me if you want really good coffee that's all about inviting women to step into our power. I also have a lot of men too. So they're like, hey, can we be included? So I've been saying, inviting people to step into their power. And, you know, and in addition to that, you know, you get to find me on social through my website. So Maruxa Murphy.
All over social media and always putting videos out there and always has some great nuggets to take away. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Candy.
Oh, absolutely. I follow her. I love following Maruxa. I love when a video pops up because it's always a burst of something that lifts my day. And really, truly, encourage you and invite you to check out everything that this amazing and incredible powerhouse has going on. She's just, as you can hear, she's just so down to earth, so real, and truly kicking some serious butt out in the industry as well. And so, you know, before we kind of part for this time, I hope that you'll consider coming back so we can have some more conversations at a later date.
I would love that.
You know, we've talked about kind of intuition, and we've talked about some of those moments of being honest with yourself and pulling yourself out of kind of the ick perhaps, or the funks we can get into, or whatever else you want to call it. If there was something you wanted to leave this audience with today, leave our listeners with, what might that be to kind of bring everything full circle?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The word that keeps coming up for me is brave. Be brave today. Take one step into that place of unknown for you, that you from your own intuitive self can sense that is the right next step. And just, you know, if you don't know what that looks like or feels like, just take some deep breaths for a few minutes and then give yourself the opportunity to ask that question. Should I do this thing or should I not? And lean into what your body's saying about that. If it feels like, yes, this is it, or yes, go for it.
Right. Yeah.
If it's like, no, danger, no, there's something about it, or if it feels like a should, it's a hell no.
Yeah.
So don't do that. But either one is a brave move, right? Because oftentimes if you're asking yourself that question, it means you're making a decision that you know is going to make an impact on your life in a different way. So I invite you to be brave today and really lean in.
I love that. And I'm going to add a little piece to that because I love that idea of brave. And because I heard you say that sometimes you just got to take that breath, breathe into the brave, right? And I think there is so much to say about whether your answer to something is yes or no, being very clear on how to say yes to yourself so that you can effectively say no to the things that aren't for you requires you to breathe into the brave. And so with that, I hope you will truly take opportunity to breathe into your brave today and know that if it's not big enough to scare you, it is absolutely not big enough to grow you. And so today is all about you starting things by saying yes to yourself and destroying the noise, and know that leadership ultimately is a choice. So again, Maruxa, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I just adore you on every level and so grateful that you've come into my life. And for all of you listening, I so adore all of you and so glad that we have this community. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. If you have not subscribed already, please do so that you do not miss any of these amazing conversations, as I just have so many powerhouse leaders to bring to you and introduce you to that are as powerful as Maruxa. And so with that, know that you have the opportunity to lead at your highest and best level. Know that leadership's a choice, and I am sending you heart-to-heart hugs. With that, go out there and be phenomenal. We will catch up on the next show next time.